Hello everybody, Howard Bernstein with you with this Hurricane Irma update here. It's early Friday afternoon and still things look very bleak for South Florida, and a lot of information has been coming in, and we've got no reason to believe that this storm is going to weaken very much from where it is now or that South Florida is going to be spared. It really looks like a very dangerous, damaging, and potentially deadly continuation of what has already been an historic storm, and one that will likely cause more harm and misery before it's over. So let's go over to the weather graphics and I'll show you what we're talking about here. This is a visible satellite imagery, and we don't have as clear as an eye, and this is a Ragged Island in the Bahamas that it's just south of, so you can imagine they're just getting hammered on this Friday afternoon there. There are some people who live there. There used to be, I believe, a salt mine or something. They worked with the salt waters there in ponds, so they had back in the day, I was doing a little research on that, but the storm is now off the Cuban coast between the Bahamas, and that island is not going to do anything to slow down the storm. And I'll show you the big picture here, because we've got three tropical systems we're watching. This Katia near Mexico, that's coming onshore. That's developed an eye, so dangerous storm for them south of Tampico. We've got Jose, also we've got to a Category 4 storm. So Jose is going to come close to Barbuda and Anguilla and those islands. I believe Barbuda's been evacuated because there's no safe place on Barbuda anymore. 95% of the buildings have been wiped out from Irma, and then of course there's Irma getting our attention, buzzsawing through the Caribbean there in the Atlantic, actually north of Cuba right now. And you can see in the infrared the darker colors, the taller cloud tops, the colder cloud tops, indicative of just this tremendous storm. Now Irma has weakened slightly, but just because it's not a Category 5, it's Category 4 now, doesn't make it really less dangerous. It's a little less dangerous. It's still a deadly storm that's going to do a lot of destruction to go. Let's show you a couple of things on Irma. I was checking out some of the wave heights here. Yesterday, before the storm was moving into the Turks and Caicos, I found some wave heights at 45, 47 feet. Now, they've come down a bit, and I'm just going to double check this while we're here and query this, because we got right here. And you can see these wave heights now are coming in 38 feet. All right, that's up a few. It was 35 last time I checked. So we've got near 40-foot waves north of the eye. That's the strongest part of any tropical system. The right side of the track is where the winds, the waves, everything just comes together with the forward motion of the storm there. So that is still killer waves. And that doesn't even include the storm surge they're seeing, which can be 10, 15, maybe 20 feet. So yeah, bad news there. The other thing about Irma, Irma's going to move over very warm water. Water being cooled a little bit, it's called upwelling. So as a storm goes over the water, it absorbs a lot of that heat energy, and we get cooler temperatures. But these red areas are at 89 degrees. Behind Irma, you see some of these water temperatures here are down 85. Even some of these light blue colors are down 84. So it took a few degrees of surface temperature down. And one of the things is not just the temperature of the water at the surface, it's how deep does that warm water go. And that's just more energy that can feed into a hurricane. And this will certainly help maintain, I believe, Irma at its current strength of 150 miles an hour. So on the 11 o'clock advisory Friday morning, still had winds at 150, gusting to 185 miles an hour, moving to the west-northwest at 14. And the barometer, 927 millibars, or if you're familiar with mercury, 27.37. And to give you a gauge, we're about 30 on a nice day. Barometers maybe 30 inches, 30.2, could get to 30.5 on a really Arctic cold air mass when you get really high pressure. So to be low 27s is very light air. Cold air, dense and heavy, that's why the barometer can be 30.5, let's say, on a really cold winter day versus as low as 27.37 is what we're looking at right now. And this storm actually had lower pressure. So the track from the Hurricane Center will take Irma just off the north coast of Cuba Saturday morning. If it would interact more with Cuba, it's possible it would weaken a little bit. Cuba's got some big hills, and that could disrupt the circulation of that. At that point, we expect it to turn toward the north on Saturday into Sunday. Right now, Saturday night into Sunday morning is when conditions will deteriorate quickly for the Florida Keys and South Florida. Storm expected to make landfall, and I stopped the clock around 9 a.m., so it could be 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning through the Keys, and then another landfall towards southern, maybe southwestern Florida. You see the hurricane warnings are up South Florida. The orange color, a little bit farther north, those are hurricane watches, and I think they'll also be in hurricane warnings. And Hurricane Center issues those in advance, so 72 hours in advance would be the watch, and then when we get more closer into the event, boom. So don't be surprised if later Friday we see those hurricane watches across the west and east coast of Florida become hurricane warnings as the storm is expected to go farther north. One thing I want to point out, when you watch the tracker, the cone goes out past Key West on the west side, but over toward Miami on the east side. So you know, we see the center track, and I know everybody focuses on that, but the storm's threat, the water, the winds, the waves, much wider than just the central point of where the storm is. The right side of the track is the stronger part of the storm. That's where we could have tornadic thunderstorms. We often get feeder bands with tornadoes. Yes, Topper?
Do you think if it goes into the Everglades, that would actually help and maybe spare Miami a bit?
So Topper is asking if it goes into the Everglades, could it spare Miami a little bit?
A little?
Maybe a little bit, but you got to remember down there, it's so swampy that it's something called the brown ocean effect, where the storm can go inland over South Florida, but you've got swampland. You've got even the Okefenokee is a large heat sink. So initially, I don't think we'll see much reduction in strength of the storm from land interaction. As it works its way north up the peninsula, that's when I think we'll start to see it weaken. And while you see the stay 4 until it gets up to Monday morning, it's going to weaken from a 3 to a 2 to a 1 at that point. It's a programming thing that doesn't interpolate. But by Monday morning, now we're expecting the storm near Ocala or just west and approaching Gainesville. That's still a hurricane Monday morning. So we've got Sunday morning to Monday morning as a hurricane traverses south to north along the Florida Peninsula. This would be bad for both coasts. On the west side, far enough west that potentially the western eye wall, which contains the strongest winds of the storm, the eye wall, but the western eye wall could get all the way to the coast. I've got a brother in the Tampa area who's going to be going to Valdosta, Georgia, and good for him, smart. He's got hurricane-proof windows and a sturdy house, but, you know, why chance it? My brother is a wise man. I salute him for doing that. Meanwhile, on the East Coast, you've got the stronger storms, so you could have some storm surge, but since it's coming from the south as opposed to the east, not as high as storm surge, and we'll look at storm surge in a minute. But you're still going to have problems with water, with winds, with waves, and with tornadic thunderstorms. There were, like we saw in Harvey, not just the flooding rains, but quite a few tornadoes were touched down. Storm will then weaken to a tropical storm probably near the Georgia-Florida state line. By the time it gets to Atlanta, we expect it to be a tropical depression. That's Tuesday morning, and the storm tracks in toward Tennessee. So that'll bring some rain and maybe some flooding rains to parts of Georgia and the mountains, the Smokies there in Tennessee and North Georgia. We've got to watch that, maybe even far western North and South Carolina. Mountain areas do flood more easily as the low valleys can collect that water very efficiently. And then what we're looking at around here, some of that moisture, as it gets far enough north, starts to get pushed east. So Tuesday until Wednesday, probably when we have the chance for showers. Let's look at some of the computer models, the spaghetti plots, pretty tightly clustered there between Cuba and Andros Island, and then the turn toward the Florida Keys and South Florida, high topper. Then we'll see the bulk of the models are going up right through Florida. You've got some like the NAM, which takes it east, the Canadian east as well, and then the CLP5 trying to get to Apalachicola, but those are really the outliers. So consensus is usually the best forecast. It's one of the things we learned in weather school. And you see how everything really does chunk up through Georgia. A couple of them are going in toward Charleston and Columbia. That would not be good news if the storm, let's say the NAM is correct, the outlier is correct, and it stays east of Florida. It would stay a stronger storm, and it would bring spare Florida, but boy, Charleston up to Wilmington would be hammered. That doesn't appear to be a likely scenario right now. So slim possibility. As we get close to this, the models are locking in on that Florida solution, and then you see how things sort of get a little chaotic here Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, as that action starts to move up toward the east and northeast. So that's on the models there. Let's keep showing you a couple of things. Now, two key models, the GFS and the European, I've sort of stacked them together with the European on top. And in the short term, as you would expect, some very tight clustering there as the storm tracking just north of Cuba, making that turn toward the Florida Keys and in towards southwest Florida. And this is a little bit farther west than the last couple of days.
Who's been talking about that?
Topper's been talking about it. Good job, Topper. Good job.
It hasn't happened yet.
Hasn't happened yet.
So be careful.
But yes, regardless, it's still going to be a devastating storm for Florida. Here we are now as we enter Monday at 6:30. So Monday evening, storms now pulling in toward Georgia, tropical storm likely at this point. But you can imagine still the threat for tornadic thunderstorms on the east and northeast side of the storm might extend into far southwestern, southern, and western South Carolina too as the storm tracks toward Atlanta by Tuesday morning. Couple more graphics for you. Storm surge projections have come in now, and this aesthetically I find to be a beautiful looking map. But the reality of this is a horrible map. This shows how much water is projected in advance of and with Irma making landfall. Well, let's focus in. The one thing around here between Naples and that big area of purple, that's 15, 16 feet, right? It's not a highly populated area. So you got a lot of swampland, the Everglades, etc. That's the good news there. Unfortunately, through the Keys, we're looking at 5, 6, 7 feet, it looks like, or 3 to 7 feet. And boy, that's going to be an unbelievable storm surge there.
Yeah.
And you see how far it extends inland. What's that, 20 miles? Some of that water there. It's very little population. That I-75 between Naples and Miami, Alligator Alley, south of there, there's not much. But Miami-Dade near the coast, Homestead, which 25 years ago got destroyed by Hurricane Andrew, is looking at potentially a 10, 11, 12-foot storm surge from this. That's not good at all because the weight of the water is like a bulldozer coming through. And I know a guy he was my trainer after my back surgery. He was there in 1992. I called him this morning. His mother and sister are still there. After having gone through Andrew, they refused to leave for Irma.
Really?
He doesn't get it. He's praying for them, but I don't get it either. And I put this on Facebook and Twitter earlier. If I told you with certainty that, oh, an EF2 tornado was coming to your house, would you stay? They said, oh, wait a minute. How about an EF2 plus potentially flooding rainfall or maybe a storm surge that could knock out walls of your house? Would you stay? No, you wouldn't, but this is what people are doing. Some choose to do this, some don't have the means, some are physically unable to be moved, but this is one of those things we're watching, just hoping for the best, but it does not look good. So finally, what do we know about Irma? Well, the critical time for South Florida, late Saturday, and they're really starting midnight, we'll say Sunday morning at 12 a.m. to Monday afternoon until the storm clears the north part of the state. Category 4 storm, still very dangerous, very destructive, very deadly. It'll track into Georgia Tuesday, and Tennessee Tuesday into Wednesday, and then lesser impacts for the D.C. region. It looks like, I think, some of the earliest impacts. It's possible late Monday night, but right now, Tuesday into perhaps parts of Wednesday, some showers or storms are what we can expect. So that is the very latest on Irma on this Friday afternoon. I thank you for your time. I'm meteorologist Howard Bernstein from the WUSA 9 First Alert Weather Center.